played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
Sam, we've made it to episode 10 of Sliced, and I think that for me, it's like no more saying who we are at the start. This is who we are. If you found us somewhere, there's a description, there's a reason you've listened, and we don't need to keep reminding people that we're a tour golf podcast. So we can just chat. That saved us 2 minutes already. Unfortunately, though, I don't have a lot to report. I'm a little bit under the weather. It's Cheltenham tomorrow. The website I work for, sportinglife.com, is very racing focused, so it's been a busy few days and will continue to get busier. Make sure you watch. Now, I've never said this sentence before in my life, but if you are free at about 10 to 8 on Tuesday morning, watch Good Morning Britain, and that's all I can say about it, okay? I'm not going to be on there, obviously.
I was about to say, that surely was implying that you're going to be on it, but
I'm not going to be on there, no. Someone slightly less famous than me might be on Good Morning Britain at that time. But yeah,
it's not your it's not your Grammy-winning, no, not Grammy-winning, so Oscar-winning cousin.
No,
Okay.
cousin is completely wrong. But
right,
no,
sorry.
it's not. It is not. This is to do with the Cheltenham Festival and Sporting Life, and yeah, we're going to be on the TV in the morning. So that's all I can say. I probably shouldn't even say that.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've said it now. It's committed to video. Any exclusives on your end?
All I'll say is I officially realised I was old on Saturday. I mean, not that it was really in doubt, but I think it sort of rubber stamped it when I was invited to a friend's birthday party, and it was a nightclub in Bournemouth. So you think, well, this doesn't sound like that old. However, it's basically exclusively for sort of older people because it was from 3 till 8 p.m. So basically, they get the oldies in. You have a sort of club night, and then they clear you out, and then they bring in the kind of the normal club goers later on. So
that's remarkable. That's like the teeny bopper discos. When I was a kid, you could go to like a nightclub when you were 15. I mean, you could just go to a nightclub when you were 15, to be fair. But they had like teeny bopper discos at around the same sort of window, and then they obviously turfed you out. But now they're doing it for the elderly. That's remarkable.
Yep.
Sounds like I'm no offense to the person who organised the birthday. Many happy returns to whoever it was, but I'll say no more. I don't think I'd have enjoyed it, but I'm sure you did.
It was good fun, but it did make me feel like I was old, which is never a fun feeling, is it? I mean,
if you don't mind me asking, what was your drink order at the bar? Because if you're in full nightclub mode, I mean, presumably you've got a like Strawpedo, a Smirnoff Ice, or something. Do people still do that?
No, sadly, it was
glass of
nothing
wine?
that extravagant. It was £6 small cans of Moretti. So it was
£6. Oh, you live down south, don't you?
Not great. Well,
Exactly.
exactly.
Those prices in my hometown, mate. No.
Anyway, let's move on to a review of last week's events, and we're leading, of course, with the DP World Tour, the Joburg Open, which Calum Hill won in a playoff. Now, I'll say, Ben, I was at my son's football match. I think I caught the last maybe half a dozen holes, and it was quite a good finish, actually, because there was sort of 4 or 5 people who were well in the thick of it. Obviously, in the end, it went to a 3-way playoff. I mean, it looked like for a long time it was going to be, well, Hill would either win outright or Kruijswijk would take it to a playoff. And then Norris managed to birdie 2 of the last 3, which was obviously good for him to get back into it. And it was a good playoff, and good win for Calum Hill.
Yeah, probably an overdue second win. I think when he won his first, people would have expected a little bit more from him. I know he's definitely had some injury problems. You'd have done well to see it coming. I mean, I think he'd had 3 missed cuts in a row. He'd never had a top 10 in South Africa. I think we got a couple of things right. I mean, I said that Kenya could be a good guide, and he's gone very close to winning in Kenya before. The other thing that will interest some is that both wins now have been on Jack Nicklaus design courses. I don't know really what to make of that, how much stock to place in it, but it's certainly like an interesting, notable feature of both those wins. But above all, for me, I mean, it's absolutely full credit to him for taking his chance, and he still had to make that putt in regulation. It was a left to right 4 or 5 footer. They still have to be made, but I mean, I know I say it a lot, but the margin between winning and not winning, and ultimately, I suppose it's summed up best by when the ball left the club face on 18, Dylan Fratelli, who was playing with him, would have been far happier with his strike than Calum Hill, but there was that sort of basin at the top right of that green, and Calum Hill's ball missed the green to the right, took one big kick in. I mean, maybe he was erring on that side, knowing that that was the sort of backstop, but it could not have gone better for him. And then I'll be honest, I had to go out and didn't see the playoff, but I know he's won. The other two have made mistakes in the playoff. But he's paid his dues. He'll be on the wrong end of things like that. Every golfer experiences it. But as a Fratelli backer myself, I in the end left feeling that he probably should have won. Missed a short putt on 17, batted a wedge on 15 when he should have been hitting a 9-iron. But both of them came from the clouds, didn't they? I think both were 8 shots back going into Sunday. And it shows you again, really, that the important thing is not so much the gap, it's the number of players you've got to pass. And when you've got a 4-shot leader like Sean Norris, you're only asking for one person to play poorly or even to stand still, as he did, and the tournament's wide open. It was a thrilling finish, a great way to leave South Africa.
Yeah, it was a shame for Norris, really, because ultimately all he needed was a 1 under round would have been enough, right? No, he did do well to get back into it, but in the playoff, second playoff hole, he hit it into the bunker, which is obviously an error, and then he slipped taking his bunker shot on the approach and it hit it in the water. So it's okay. That I always feel like there should be a sort of a penalty for being in the bunker. A lot of the time, you look at sort of fairway bunker shots, and you think, well, actually, this is routine stuff. So actually, in a way, it was kind of refreshing to see someone punished for being in the bunker, but it was a slightly cruel way for him to go out of that tournament. But yeah, no, Hill was great, and I just want to say on Calum Hill. I mean, I don't know if you sort of saw any of this, Ben, but one of my fond memories of I don't have many fond memories of lockdown, I'll be honest, but one of them was watching some dodgy Periscope stream of the Outlaw Tour where Calum Hill was playing a couple of events. And he won once. I can't remember the name of the tournament now. I think he had his girlfriend sort of on the bag, or he was driving around in a golf cart at the time. Won something like, I don't know, $4,000 or something. Half the field had been disqualified for playing from the wrong tee box in one of the holes. I mean, it's just such a weird way to win a tournament, and a weird tournament really, and a weird time in everyone's lives. So yeah.
Very much so. I mean, things like that surely should be rewarded on the Outlaw Tour. I mean, that's got to be the name of the game. Like, find a rule to break. Yeah, very strange time. He went to college in New Mexico, didn't he? And I think he actually considered. Well, I'll probably have this wrong. I think he spent a bit of time coaching in his final years of college. I'm not
didn't know
that
that.
he considered going down that route. That all of a sudden doesn't sound likely now. Now I'm thinking it, but yeah. Again, the last thing to say, really, Sean Norris and Jack Craiswick have both won this season on the DP World Tour. And it just shows we'll come on to it with Bay Hill. It is so fluid. The margin is so small. And, the guy, Sean Norris has won a lot of tournaments. Every time I see him on a Sunday, he looks edgy. And I think he just always will. And for most players, that is the reality of it. It's hard for us to comprehend. Like, this is such a high pressure scenario in a sport where every macro movement, whether it is your footwork or whatever, slightly off rhythm, slightly faster takeaway, all those tiny things can be magnified and are magnified. And to play it under pressure, I think it has to be one of the hardest sports in the world. People talk about footballers being under pressure, and pressure is experienced across all sports, but athletes, no doubt that some athletes have what's Asafa Powell famously in loads of finals has not run his fastest, but golf is just so hard to produce under pressure, and basically it affects everyone, and the winner is usually the guy it affected slightly less, or who just happened to win. And that's what probably happened here. It could have been any one of 4 players, and it was Calum Hill, and good luck to him. Yeah,
absolutely. On to PGA Tour. Obviously, there were 2 events. So we'll talk about the Puerto Rico Open first. Carl Phillips won, 23-year-old Australian. Really impressively closed out. I managed to catch a little bit actually, and he looks a really good player. And I will just say, I've got to put my hands up here. I need to do better in terms of amateur golf and junior golf, because really, when he got signed to Sunday Red, I was kind of like, I sort of vaguely knew the name, but I didn't really know very much about him. And that was less than a month ago, I think. And now he's won on the PGA Tour, and he's clearly going places. So I'm putting my hands up to that.
Yeah, can't ask much more, can you? As Sunday Red, they sign a I mean, the gear is horrible. It's too expensive, and that's a mountain that no amount of PGA Tour winners in Puerto Rico will be able to scale alone. But if you're going to sign a brand ambassador to play on the PGA Tour for you, I think there was talk, is it going to be Tom Kim? Is it going to be Justin Thomas? It's Carl Phillips, who's been injured, who's barely played, and whose Corn Ferry Tour season was sort of typified by wild swings in form. When he won, he looked brilliant. And his swing is so good. It's super powerful, but balanced and technically sort of aesthetically pleasing. He looks a serious prospect. But yeah, to have invested in him and see that paid out, albeit away from the main event of the week, is pretty cool. And I suppose we've had a lot of chat over the last couple of years about rookies and how hard it is now. You come onto the PGA Tour and you don't get into as many events, and mapping out a schedule is really difficult. And it's nice to see someone like him win, and obviously Brian Campbell, a very different player, but he was up against Aldrich Pochito, who is a similar player to Phillips. And they're getting their chances now as we get into the meat of the season, and I'm really impressed with how a couple of them have taken them.
And let's talk about Rasmus Nergaard Peterson, because he was right in the thick of things. He's dropped off a little bit on Saturday. He had a very good round on Friday, didn't he? Dropped off a little bit on Saturday, and then he came rallying back on Sunday. And for a time, it looked like he might go close, may even take it to a playoff, because Phillips bogeyed at with 13 or 14, I think. And at that point, you thought, okay, maybe Nergaard Peterson's still in this. And then Phillips reels off 3 birdies in a row and puts it to bed. But that's his first, Nergaard Peterson's first ever PGA Tour start. So that's a really good to finish runner-up on your, it just shows how promising he is as a player.
Totally, yeah. 6 birdies in a row from the turn, I think, maybe from the 9th. And he was 1 shot ahead at one point. And I imagine on the exchanges, although Phillips had a par 5 in hand, I imagine Nergaard Peterson had gone favourite at that point. And I said that 3 pars, the final 3 holes, would make a difficult target. So all credit for Phillips in the end, winning it with a couple of shots to spare. But yeah, that's the second tournament in a row that the very same thing has happened to Nergaard Peterson, because his previous start, it's about a month ago, but it was in Qatar where he hit the front there and missed a pretty short putt as Hao Tong Lee won. But basically the same thing happened. He took the lead. It looked like the leader probably would struggle, and Hao Tong found something just as Phillips did. So it feels a matter of time for Nergaard Peterson. I mean, not only could he have won those 2 events, he probably should have won the Challenge Tour Grand Final late last year. So that's like 3 of his last 10 tournament starts. He's also placed in a Dubai Desert Classic during this run. I mean, his rate of progression is serious, isn't it?
Class act.
He's not on the Ryder Cup radar insofar as points at the moment, really, but it's easy to imagine him just carrying on and building and building. And look, bumps in the road are bound to arrive at some stage, but if he doesn't experience one this year, then by September, you'd expect him to be one of those who's in the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really promising looking player. And then I'll take us on to the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Again, it was a pretty good finish. Several players in the mix. Russell Henley in the end won. He made that eagle chip, which, depending on where you were watching, you may not have seen all of, on 16. And that was enough to see off Morikawa. And coming back to what you were saying earlier on, Ben, about the small margins, and this struck me really with that Henley chip, because had that not dropped, that probably was going to run, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 feet past, and then all of a sudden potentially could miss that putt. Morikawa might have had the lead, or at least be tied for the lead, could have gone to a playoff. Everyone's probably looking at this thinking, suddenly Russell Henley's, he's sort of clutched up, and he did well to win it. But Morikawa hasn't sort of, at the same time, hasn't really failed there. He's been beaten by a very important moment, but it will be looked upon. You look at Morikawa's record recently. He hasn't won for a little while, and he's obviously one of the best players in the world. So there will be questions asked, but you have to look at how it happened.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, we've said before, I think it's now, 4 years and a month since he won in the US. It's 4 years almost since he won a major. 4 years since he won, almost 4 years since he won the DP World Tour Championship. The only thing he's won in the interim is the Zozo Championship in Japan, which, at the top end, that field is very, very strong, but it's a limited field. It's outside of the US. Scheffler isn't there. McIlroy's not there. It's basically Schauffele, Morikawa, and Hideki. Each of them about 10-1 every year. So. His frustrations will continue, and it's easy actually to draw some parallels with Xander Schauffele maybe a year ago. But obviously the difference with Morikawa is because of what he achieved very early on in his career, winning the PGA Championship with the drive he hit on, I think it's the 16th there, and then going on and making it look pretty simple on his Open debut. And someone said to me last night, he doesn't have the clutch gene. And it's sort of like, well, if that exists, well, he certainly did have it, so he's lost it. And obviously, I'm no genealogist, if that's the right word, but I don't think they're sort of transferable. They don't just sort of come and go. You sort of set. That's the point of them, isn't it? You've got your genes, and that is you. So it doesn't work like that in golf. Like, it's entirely fluid, and there's no way. I was impressed with Henley. Don't get me wrong, and I probably would have anticipated a couple more mistakes from him. Based on the fact that he has won occasionally rather than regularly. But, the President's Cup last year was probably a big deal for him, being paired with Scotty Scheffler, trusted to perform that role and doing so well. Bit like Laurie Cantor in some ways in the Team Cup. And the Team Cup's another step down from the President's Cup. But these things, they help build character and confidence. And I think with Henley, that probably helped him. I was actually most impressed with his putt on the 17th hole, a sort of slippery downhill putt that, again, it would not have surprised me if he missed it. And then he piped his drive down the last, like a 1-yard draw down the middle. The only other thing to say on Colin Morikawa, we say it a lot, under pressure, weaknesses get exposed, right? And there are two things he is weak at still. One is putting, and his putting comes and goes. It's the most ridiculous fact in golf, I think, that Colin Morikawa was 2 majors. He ranked first in strokes gained putting for both of them. So he has had countless golf tournaments where he has played better golf from tee to green. Like 20, 30 times he'll have done that. But he happened to hold all the putts in those 2 weeks. And again, so for that he gets credited as some, clutch gene guy, and now he's not. So the putter was quiet on Sunday, definitely. And he ended the week with a negative strokes gained putting figure. But the other thing is chipping from tight lies. And that's the thing that ties together his failure to convert the lead yesterday, his failure to convert in the Hero, and his failure to convert in the Sentry. All of those involve some really dodgy chips and pitches from tight lies. We're not going to get into whether it's a chip or a pitch, right? But that was the one. The one on the 14th hole, I think it was yesterday, the par 3. He's come up slightly short with an approach he seemed pretty happy with. But for a lot of people, that's quite a simple chip. And Shane Lowry from the same spot chipped it to 3 or 4 feet. Morikawa chipped it to 15 feet. And that's pressure. And to be honest, it was really bad, wasn't it, that chip? And that's what's cost him.
Yeah. But one thing that I think is interesting is it looks like, his strength for a long time, he's obviously got several strengths, but his main strength was a very, very strong mid-iron player. They're sort of long, they're sort of 175 to 200 yard range. And that looks like it's back to its very best again. So that could be very interesting to watch his kind of ball striking looks like. Because I know there's a time that he slightly lost that sort of tight fade that he had, that he basically would just, would drop where he wanted it to. It feels like that might be back. So I think it could be, we could be on the cusp of a good season for him. And whether that happens this week, or the Players, or over the next couple of months, who knows? Obviously he did well at the Masters last year. So something to monitor.
And look, the other thing I just want to say about Bay Hill is it's really easy, and I've been guilty of this. Bryson's won there, Rory's won there. It's a big golf course. Kurt Kitayama hits it miles as well. It's a big golf course, thick rough. It feels a bit like a US Open. But I looked at that leaderboard last night, and I've not sort of cross-referenced the stats as to how each of them got where they got in the week itself. But if you were to name like the most sort of a collection of the solid old-school fairway-finding ball strikers on the PGA Tour, Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry. And they're pretty much the only people who had any chance to win apart from Jason Day, who, by the way, obviously we learned is back with his old coach, Cole Swatton. And interesting that they were working, the first thing they worked on was putting, and he putted really well last week. Yeah,
definitely. Again, another player who, his ceiling is still high. He's not no spring chicken anymore, but he's still got something left in the tank.
Oh, he is 100% not done winning big tournaments. I'm convinced of it. I like whether it's this week, this year, Jason Day. Like I think we saw it at the Open the year before last. Like he's just so comfortable. Now, I've gone from saying it's fluid, and actually he's probably a good example. First 10 years of his career, he was banging his head against a wall, wasn't he? And then he really broke through and became the best player in the world for like 12, 18 months, won a heck of a lot of tournaments, including the PGA, where he beat the golden child, Jordan Spieth. But since then, I just think every time he does appear in that situation, even though it happens less often, remember the way he won at Quail Hollow as well, and at the Byron Nelson, he's just really comfortable being there. It doesn't faze him, and I don't think with him that will change over time. So yeah, I'd be surprised if there's not something big in his future.
Yeah, agreed. I'll rattle us through some of the other events that happened last week. The LPGA, Blue Bay LPGA in China. Ria Takeda won by 6. Really impressive. She's only 21 still. She won several times on the Japanese LPGA, but that was the second win on the LPGA, so really impressive. Sadly, the Ladies European Tour, the Australian WPGA, was cancelled due to weather, which is a real shame for them. I think they've got a tournament this week, possibly. Yes, they have. Other than that, the Australian Tour, it was a New Zealand PGA Championship. Another fellow lefty getting their name on the against some silverware. Tyler Hodge. I don't know much about his backstory, but I don't think it's the same as Ryan Peake. But
I was going to ask whether there was any sort of inspiration by comparison boost there, and he was a fellow, used to be a shoplifter or something. Perhaps he. Obviously, I know nothing of his past, but I think the left-handedness is the only similarity I can find. Corn Ferry Tour, the Astara Chile Classic. Logan McAllister won that one. Did you have something to say about that, Ben? You look like you were... No, not a great deal. Just I think he's probably very promising. I mean, he shot 63, 64 at the weekend, which is the low weekend in the field by quite a long way. It was nice to see Cole Hammer play well. Feels like Cole Hammer's been around for like 15 years. So often was he talked about, but he's still very young and searching for consistency. And also Scotland's Sandy Scott, a bit of a mouthful. He got better as the week went on. He's clearly one that they've thought highly of in Scotland for a long time. And he went to Q schools at the back end of last year, didn't he? He's ended up on the Corn Ferry Tour via the Latino America Tour. I think he snuck his Corn Ferry Tour card by like a shot in the end, and we're starting to see him build on that. And it'd be interesting to follow his progress.
Yeah, he could be good. Liv Hong Kong, Sergio Garcia won, and we could talk about his Ryder Cup prospects. We have previously talked about that. I think we may leave that to another episode, just on the basis of we want to focus a little bit on the players this week. But obviously, I'm sure he'll see it as a notable win. I know he sort of mentioned Luke Donald. He feels like Luke Donald was watching. I think he said, or something.
One of the 20,000, was he?
I don't know whether he means watching in the literal sense, or kind of watching
checking the scoreboard like the rest of us. Yeah.
TGL. Obviously, there was 3 matches last week. As you'll know, Ben, my team LAGC did beat the Bay. An impressive comeback win, and it looks reasonably likely that they may face off in the playoff final if they can see off Atlanta Drive and New York respectively. That was actually a good match. I quite enjoyed watching that one.
It featured on the BBC 5 Live Saturday morning show Fighting Talk on Saturday.
Oh, really?
The TGL, yeah. In reasonably glowing terms as well. Reasonably glowing? I don't think you can be reasonably glowing. I don't think the host Rick Edwards was enamoured, but whoever it was on the panel was saying, you should watch TGL. It's great. So there are at least 3 of us advocating for it.
It seems to have caught enough attention. I read this morning that there's talk about another team being added at some point in the next 2 seasons, which I thought that seems like quite a long window to be adding one team.
Sounds pretty fast in golf terms. You should don't rush this, lads.
Well, it's fast compared to if you're looking at the kind of the deal, so to speak, terms, which still rumbles on.
Maybe we just need Noel Edmonds. You just made me think maybe we need Noel Edmonds and a bloke on the phone. Deal or no deal, take it or leave it, and let's all crack on. Sorry, Champions Tour. You want to talk Champions Tour?
I know. I'm just going to mention that Steve Alker has won again, which I don't know how many times he's won since he's been on the Champions Tour, but he seems to have he's basically the Tiger Woods of the Champions Tour all of a sudden, having been kind of a bit of a journeyman really over most of his career.
And look, I hate the Champions Tour, as you know, but it is the one fascinating aspect of it. And because I saw Soren Kjelson's gearing up for his Champions Tour debut. He won on the Nordic Golf League last week. He beat Pep Angles, who's been a good player on the European Tour and Challenge Tour. And is a vastly more powerful player as well than Soren, who's kept sharp, I think, and he's got a couple of sons who are both very good. So he'll be joining the seniors circuit, and I honestly, my impression of the seniors circuit is that if you putt well, it's probably more a putting contest than the PGA Tour. I think Soren Kjelsson could do loads of damage. And someone said on Twitter, he's just a journeyman pro. It's like, yeah, have you heard of Stephen Olker? There is precedent here for players to find a new lease of life.
The only thing I will say about your putting theory, and I don't disagree with it necessarily, but when Freddie Jacobsen turned 50 last year, I think it was, and he started playing on the Champions Tour, I thought he could do big things because he is maybe one of the best putters in the history of the game, but he hasn't won yet. And I mean, I don't know. He's probably less of a grinder, I think, than Kjelsson. It would be fair to say he's much more kind of a sort of almost Dubuisson-esque, maybe not quite that much, but he's.
If the Senior Open ever goes to Portrush or Royal County Down, where he won the Irish Open, Soren Kjelsson, put it in the calendar.
Okay.
An anti-post tip for you: Soren Kjelsson to win the Senior Open Championship at some point in the next 10 years.
At a couple of specific courses.
Yeah, I mean, ideally in Ireland or Northern Ireland, but he could win it anywhere. He's great.
Right into sort of in the news section. Not a ton to cover here, but one potentially notable thing: Fred Couples. I'm not sure on what show or what interview who was it being interviewed by, but he claimed that Brooks Koepka wants to return to the PGA Tour, and I think it's fair to point out at this stage that Couples doesn't have the best track record when it comes to sort of piping up about this stuff, because obviously he infamously said Cam Young can pack his bags for Rome, and he, as it turns out, didn't have to pack his bags for Rome because he wasn't on the team. Phil Mickelson, in classic style, responded in a later deleted tweet, calling it a low-class jerk move.
Deletes more tweets than me, that man. I personally, if I were Phil Mickelson, I wouldn't be on my high horse about low-class jerk moves. But yeah, you're right about Fred Couples, though. I mean, he clearly just enjoys the chance to pontificate, as some of us do. And they don't take it well, do they? Any talk of they're very defensive, Live Golf, about there's an insecurity there that is revealed by stuff like this. When Bryson comes out and says, I'm very happy here and stuff, it's just an insecurity about it. But that's normal. Mm-hmm. That's normal.
Am I allowed to tell my Fred Couples story, Ben?
Please. Well, depend. I don't know the substance of the story, but I can't wait. Did you see him at a over 50s nightclub or something?
Nothing that exciting, unfortunately. At least not a nightclub. But when I was over at the President's Cup 2022 at Quail Hollow,
they call that a humble brag. They call that a humble brag.
Yeah, yes. And I was doing my songs for the two teams. So I had a song for the US team, song for the international team, and I performed these there was sort of like a gala dinner, not sort of sit down dinner, but in a big ballroom in this hotel in Charlotte. And I did my songs, and both teams were there with their wives and a few kind of corporate sponsor people. And I got off the stage having done my US song, and Fred Couples came over and gave me a fist bump. And that was probably definitely in the top 3 coolest moments of my life, I will say.
I'll be surprised if it's not number 1. I mean, that's Fred Couples being the coolest golfer on earth. How could you not love that? Yeah. Lovely. Does he look as good in person as he does?
I feel like he did. I mean, Yeah. I should follow up by saying Zach Johnson also came over and gave me a fist bump, but that one's less braggy. There's less need to brag about that one, I think.
You didn't call him sir, did you? You'd have been furious.
Yeah. But anyway, yes. Thank you for allowing me to tell that story.
No problem.
The other things in the news: Beef Johnson came out saying that his hand injury had flared up and potentially could be out for the season.
Yeah, he's had a really rough few years, hasn't he, Beef? I was reading on today's golfer that the hand injuries come back. It's the reason he was out in 2022, 2023, for parts of 2024, and he's back having some injections, I think. If you go to today's golfer, there's a full story if you do want to find out. I think he also has a podcast. I'm not sure if he's revealed it on that, but he's obviously active on Instagram and stuff like that.
Wasn't there something about a misdiagnosis or something I read?
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't get into the weeds of it, I'm afraid. So I don't want to speculate too much, but it sounds like he might have received some bad advice. One thing I will say about Beef, I know sort of 3, maybe 4 people who've met him, and they say, everyone, the first thing they say is, you could not meet a nicer bloke. And I know that's the impression a lot of people get, but sometimes impression versus reality, they don't always align. But I think in his case, a lot of people wish him well. And I think he might be like 40 now, or certainly getting close to it. And when he won at Valderrama, won at Valderrama, top 10 in the Open, had it not been for injuries, I'm pretty certain we'd be talking about a likely multiple DP World Tour winner and a really rock solid golfer. And instead, he's been on the periphery, and it's a shame.
Let's hope that he can get back to full fitness. I have once shared a beer with Beef, not to sort of flex again. But,
so you're the fourth person I know. Now, please don't contradict what I.
He's a lovely bloke, though, and we wish him well. Last thing to mention: Tom McKibbin and Paul Casey both entered in the Singapore Classic field. That's next week, right?
Yeah, that's right. The start of the next swing on the DP World Tour. And don't forget, join our Fancy Golf League. We'll be promoting it a little bit more on social media over the next sort of 7 to 10 days. But there is a really good prize. 2 tickets to Wentworth, to the Scottish Open, to the Irish Open, or the British Masters. All 4 days, 2 tickets to one lucky winner of our Fancy Golf League. The code's in the show notes. Even if you've not... That swing, sorry, yes. The international swing, which begins with the Singapore Classic. Even if you've not entered the game yet, doesn't matter, because it's a sub-league, if you like, for these 4, 5, 6 events, however many there are. Therefore, we all start on a level footing. So, as for McKibbin, a lot of people will be surprised. You have people who don't follow golf closely saying, well, hold on a minute, he just joined Live. Why is he allowed? As I understand it, the rule is still very simple. For every Live Golf event you play, you get an equivalent fine and suspension. But you serve those suspensions concurrently. So what have there been? 2 or 3 Live events? 3, maybe? Adelaide?
2?
Hong Kong? Just 2?
I don't know.
Saudi Arabia as well. I think they're on 3.
Maybe. Okay.
That is cut through, my friends. So he's played 3. He will have been banned for like the last 2 weeks in South Africa, and then 3 events that have happened since we last saw him in the Middle East. So he is allowed to play. I think it shows. I think Live's in Singapore this week, right? So it's not. They're in the right place. But I do think McKibbin still wants to keep his name in the conversation for the Ryder Cup, and in his case, maybe different to Sergio, that is going to depend on playing well in some DP World Tour events.
Yeah, 100%.
And Casey, let's not rule out Casey. He's playing some good golf. If he went and won in Singapore and kicked on for the rest of the year, then he'd be in there as well. But they're both there.
Quickly talk about the world of golf this week. It's actually quite a quiet week, apart from obviously the players, which we'll talk about in more depth shortly. Ladies European Tour is on Australia for the Australian Women's Classic. The Hotel Planner Tour is back in action at the Kolkata Challenge. And as we just mentioned, Live are in Singapore for sort of their second week in Asia. So we'll talk about players much more in detail, but quickly talk about our player tracker. Elvis Smylie didn't play last week. Thought he might play in New Zealand, having been there already for the New Zealand Open, but he took the week off. And Ayora tied 59th in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, not much to say, is there? It's okay. But at the moment, whatever their long-term futures, it's clear that at the moment, Rasmus Nygaard Peterson, probably helped by the fact that he played a load of DP World Tour last year, is just that step ahead in terms of being comfortable, being ready to go and show his best. But again, I'd be generous with any player, and it'll be the same when Nygaard Peterson suffers a dip. You have to allow for that. And nothing I've seen so far has shaken my belief that Ayora will go close to winning this year, whether he does win or not. And that in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, he'll be on the up and up.
Keeping the faith. I like it.
Oh yeah.
Quickly talk about our fantasy game. Obviously, mentioned about the fact you should definitely join because the prizes are very good. So we'll put the code and everything in our show notes. But definitely worth signing up. And I'll mention that Lewis Blaine is still leading the season-long race. The gap, I think, has been closed slightly by Garvin Howarth, but it's still those are the top two. I'm up to 40th after a solid week last week. Norris, unfortunately, didn't win, which could have been even better. But I had
you had Ollison and you
four
had
in the top 10.
Oh, great! Well done.
Yeah, and you, unfortunately, Ben, have slid down to 65th.
Well, I think there's something going on here because I did, because we were trying to work out how to do this prize thing, I did enter like a test team as well, and someone did tweet me to say, I think you might be logging into the wrong. I think I might be like alternating between the two and entering team for one but failing for the other. So really, what you should do is combine my points. But that,
I think you need to sort of have a proper look and see if that's actually happening, rather than assuming the reason that you're sliding down the leaderboard is because you're.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Rather than your picks not being very good, Ben.
Yeah, I'm certainly not flying, but I can't remember. I can't even remember who I picked last week. So I'm going to take it more seriously in Singapore because I want to win those tickets. More seriously, I mean, obviously we're not allowed to win, right? I mean, that's a given.
Of course.
Of course. We don't want to go full Sepp Blatter. Yeah,
that wouldn't go down well. But
sorry, go on.
I would encourage you, Ben, to get your shit together, to be honest. Yeah,
I nearly finished that sentence for you. So there you go. You can tell we've done 10 of these now. I thought I'd be the first one to swear. I mean, it was Laurie first, then you.
Yeah,
me
next. I nearly stopped myself, but I thought, actually, no, it's the right sentence.
If I don't take it seriously, how can I expect others to? This is what I preach to my son all the time. I need to live up to my own expectations. Good.
Right, let's talk about the Players' Championship. And firstly, I'll mention that I managed to have a conversation earlier on with Stephen Cox, who is a tournament director at TPC Sawgrass. Now, here's something I wanted to say here, because this is something that I learned when I went over there about 18 months ago now. And Stephen gave me a guided tour of TPC Sawgrass, which was awesome. It was closed at the time. The course was closed at the time because they were overseeding it. But one thing that I didn't realize was, the rules officials, that come out when someone needs a ruling or whatever. They are the same people who do the whole tournament setup, like work on the sort of agronomy and how long the rough's going to be, how fast the greens are going to be, all those sort of things. I never realized that they were the same people. Did you know that?
I would assume they were different, but I suppose it makes sense. They're going to know, because often it will be a dispute over what's a penalty area, and so on and so forth, where the boundary of the course is and things like that. So no, didn't know that.
Yeah. Anyway, so I had a chat with him, and a few little insights. I mean, first thing to mention was they were hoping to have it play firm and fast. That was the aim, as I think it generally is. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of rain over the last couple of days. He said, I think 2 to 2.5 inches over the weekend, and he basically said that sort of ruins any hope of the course playing firm and fast. He did say that the forecast is looking good, in the run up to the tournament, so it should dry out a little, but not, as much as they would hope. So that's the first thing to note. I asked him, I said, are there any previous editions that this might be most similar to condition-wise? And he said, actually, last year is probably the closest because they had quite a lot of rain on the Sunday night. He said not quite as much as this year, but that's probably the closest in recent years to look at if you want to look at sort of how soft the course will be playing.
And we got really low scoring last year, didn't we? So that probably suggests we may well get it again.
It may well be another low scoring one.
But there's some troubled forecast for the weekend, isn't there? I need to check again, but there's at least a chance we get some wind during this tournament, which we didn't really get last year. So
there may be some wind coming, but definitely in terms of the ground conditions will be pretty soft. They've been trying to make that. I mean, they've put some tee boxes back. Second hole, for example, they're trying to make second shots longer. Basically, they're trying to reward people who can play good long approaches. Essentially, actually comes back to Morikawa I was talking about. Incidentally, they've been working with Davis Love to restore some of the sort of bolder features that Pete Dye is sort of known for. They've been kind of weakened over the years. He mentioned, and I mean, we don't get too into the weeds here, but on Sunday they're going to be having sort of special hole locations to commemorate previous editions. So, for example, they can use the back left hole location on Sunday for the 25th anniversary of Hal Sutton's "Be the Right Club Today." So, that's a little.
Well, that's nice. So, have you got the hole location for the 17th hole on Sunday to hand? Is that surely
18th.
that's
Not the 17th.
So that's the 18th. He didn't tell you 17th because 17th is usually behind the bunker on the right, isn't it?
Yeah, I suspect that one probably doesn't change. I know that he said that the 16th hole location they're going to honour the Ricky Fowler Eagle, if you remember that, from 2015 when he won, and he hit his approach. It was on the right hand side, in between the water and that tiny little gap between the water. So they're going to use that hole
it's
location.
Often been front left on Sunday on that hole, presumably to encourage eagles because there's a little collection area. But great, stick it near the water.
Yes, exactly. I'm always in favour of sticking the pins near the water if I'm not playing the course. That is.
Generally, like water is a bit overused in golf, isn't it? But if you've got a course like this, lean into it. I think Sawgrass is great because it is what it says it is. It's got a purpose. It's built for this, so we might as well exploit that to its fullest.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I'll say, and this is just more of a kind of quite a nice thing, I think. You may remember there was this overhanging tree that was on the 6th hole that they had to get rid of.
I do not remember that, Sam.
Well, there was a famous overhanging tree. I mean, I couldn't remember what hole it was on, but they had to get rid of it because it had, rotted or whatever. It had to be removed. But they've taken it and they've turned it into a bench, which will be on the 6th tee now, so players can sort of sit down.
That's nice. If Woozy's in the field, the famous picture of Woozum on the bench at 13 at Augusta.
That's a great picture, isn't it?
Who's going to be first to sit on the bench, do you think? Who just wants to chill out on the bench? I don't know.
Presumably whoever's the first group through, I don't know.
No, because first group through, you just keep moving, don't you? You've got to be a hold-up. So it's whoever's behind Harmon and Cantlay. Whoever's behind Harmon and Cantlay, they sit on the bench, put the feet up and put the world to rest.
Can you have a word with some of your bookie friends and get a sort of side market on this? The first player to sit on the bench.
First benched player. Very good.
So let's talk sort of more about Sawgrass generally. I mean, where does it rank for you, Ben, in terms of your favourite courses on the PGA Tour, or in fact on tour, generally?
I'd probably say it's like second on the PGA Tour. I think, second. Riviera's number one. Riviera's out on its own. There are some that depends on what sort of level of golf you are, I suppose. I'm trying to think, are there others that I'd rather play? And maybe there are, but actually, I think I'd play Sawgrass just so I said I could say I'd played it. Like Pebble Beach, I suppose, would probably have to go above it in that. So maybe it would be behind that in the courses I'd like to play. But in terms of tour courses, I've really warmed to it, I think, over the years. I think it's a purpose-built venue, and that's fine. It does whatever it represents for those who do play it. Like it's there for this really, and it's given us so many great moments. And I think the finishing three would probably be hard to top anywhere in terms of the drama and the potential for volatility. It's like there are some closing holes on the tour that I hate. The last hole at Harbour Town, right? I mainly hate it because of Kuchar holding out from the bunker that time, but if you want to make a 4 on that hole as a professional golfer, unless you are really struggling or you just happen to hit a bad shot, it does happen. But really, you've got like a 70-yard wide fairway. You can lay back of the hazard. There's no incentive to hit driver. Everyone hits 3-wood these days. And basically, if you don't need to attack the flag, no one's going left of the flag in the hazard. Sawgrass has got very clear things it asks you to do. Like it's don't hit it here. But the alternative is not always that appealing. And 18 is a great example. Don't hit it in the water, obviously. And immediately you think of Justin Thomas's drive, year he won it, I think 2021. Yeah. But if you do go right, not only are you in the trees, not only are you in the pine straw, but the hole has got longer as well. And actually, we've seen, was it Cam Smith who hit it out of the trees into the water.
Yes.
So it's just loads of stuff like that. Like it's a golf course that tells you what it expects you to do, but it feels like every shot, or not every shot, but most shots are of really high consequence, and you just have to execute. And it's probably why, we come to what it takes to win it. But loads of people have won this without making many putts. Like you just got to execute the shots that you do well to put it into water. I wouldn't put it past some, but it's keeping it out of the hazards, keeping it on the right side of the fairways and stuff. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
I will say my only sort of gripe with it, and it's not really a fault of Sawgrass itself, it's more a fault of the kind of modern game generally, is if you look through the leaderboards in sort of recent years, there's the last 2 or 3 years, a lot less of the kind of plodders, if you will, kind of there or thereabouts as were back in the day. You think, we've had people like, David Toms, KJ Choi, Paul Goydos, Colt Nose, people like that have been sort of in contention. Tim Clark obviously winning. You don't really get that many of those type of players. I suppose there's less of those type of players generally, maybe on tour, at this level on tour now. But it does feel like you look at the last couple of years, and it's more powerful hitters are there or thereabouts.
Yeah, you're probably right there, and the overriding reason will be the nature of the whole game has changed in that direction, right? And I think to some degree you'd experience that in every tournament. Obviously, Brian Harman arguably should have won it last year. I do think more so than most courses on the PGA Tour, there is scope for that to happen still. But you'd want it to be firmer, wouldn't you? Ideally,
yeah.
It's hard to compete if you're a shorter hitter when it's soft.
I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? Yeah. Fifth major, obviously, this is something that they often talk about, and they call it the fifth major. Do you call it the fifth major? Is that a thing?
No, it isn't, is it? So, I think excuse me, I'm coughing a lot today, and I've run out of liquid. I think if you were going to make a fifth major, it would be really, really stupid to make it this. And I actually think as well, however many majors you have 100 majors, you have 2 majors, however many you have, there has to be a next tournament that is like the best of the rest, the best non-major. That's this. Yeah. So you've got an identity, you've got that. And particularly where it is now in the calendar, the fact that it comes before the majors, it's great. It doesn't need to be a major, and I don't think it ever will be, by the way. I think the PGA Tour, they've done some stupid stuff, but they'd be really stupid to try and push for this to be the fifth major. People hate them enough already. So, yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. And for what it's worth, I don't think there should be a fifth major. But if there were to be a fifth major, in my mind, it should be on the Southern Hemisphere. But, that's...
Totally, yeah. Totally. I think it should be the Australian Open. It's fairly simple.
Yeah.
I even wonder if you could make it some sort of international open and move it around Australia, South Africa, Japan. There are loads of places with deep, rich heritage in golf where there are good enough golf courses, facilities, fan interests. By the way, I think there should be a fifth major. Not that it should be Australia if they did one. I do think there should be one. I'm not someone who believes, there are 4. There's been 4 my whole life, and therefore, how could you change that? Once upon a time, there weren't 4. You can do it. Just don't make the same mistake the LPGA did and add the Evian Championship, whatever you do. Don't add the Valspar or whatever.
Whatever it is, it shouldn't it shouldn't be sponsored, I don't think.
No, in an ideal world, look, the women's game is different. It has different things going on. The money isn't there to the same extent. So it's easy to throw stones at the Evian. It's great that they put on a tournament at what looks a gorgeous spot, but it just doesn't necessarily feel like a major. And I agree. Yeah, it just has to be an open championship somewhere around the world. And I don't understand the reason for not making it Australia. I can't think of a single reason why you wouldn't do that, except tax laws, which is not a reason.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I mean, I don't know whether I'd agree or disagree on that, but I do think that there should be a big tournament that the best players play in Australia in some form.
Totally.
Yeah. Now you've put something down here, Ben, which which you wanted to discuss, the Ricky Fowler Award. who is overrated right now? Which I really like as a question, but it's also a very hard one to answer because how are you defining overrated? Are you defining it in the sense of maybe how someone is, where they stand in the betting market relative to how often they win, in terms of kind of how people view that player, or sort of anecdotally, I don't know. I mean, define, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm immediately regretting this. And actually, and for context, obviously Ricky Fowler won this the week that a poll came out of PGA Tour golfers to anonymously declare who was the most overrated player, and it was Ricky Fowler, wasn't it? And then did he birdie the last 6 or something?
Something like that. Yeah.
Beat Kevin Kisner and Sergio Garcia in a playoff. A great achievement. I think we've sometimes, I actually think Ricky Fowler probably has always been underrated, if anything. He's achieved a heck of a lot in the game without quite getting to the very top, and that's, there are always players like that, but I think Ricky was a top class golfer. I don't know who I think is overrated, and I feel bad about this, Sam, because this was my idea. What I will say is I know there's been a bit of talk lately about Min Woo Lee potentially being overrated, and yes. I think that will be proven false.
Yeah, well, this is part of my problem with the whole overrated thing, because it feels like
it's personal, isn't it? Yeah.
I throw out also, but one of us throws out a name, and they go and win this week or in the next few weeks. You look stupid, right?
Sure, absolutely. Maybe I should just say the name of some golfers I'm planning to tip in case we can somehow get one over the line.
That might be the way to play it. I mean, I will say, and again, I don't like the term. I don't really want to have to do this, but if I'm forced, then I would potentially say, if we're looking at win ratio relative to how they are viewed in terms of their betting odds.
Don't do it. I don't want to hear it.
Patrick Henley.
Oh, that's fine. I thought you were going to say Tommy. I just don't want to hear it.
No, I'm not going to say. I won't say him because he will at some point will win. It could be this week. He finished pretty strongly last week. I don't know. I would not do that to Tommy, but I think
I've got a couple I'll throw for you. So one is Sung Jae Im, and I love Sung Jae, so I don't like saying it, but he's won the Shriners and the Honda. And for someone who it's now 6 years since he played so well in the President's Cup, and I think we thought he'd have done a bit more. Now he's been second in the Masters. I don't like this. I think they're all fantastic. Genuinely, these are some of the best guys. It's a silly thing to talk about. I feel really bad, Sam, that this was my idea. The other one is Sam Burns, right? And the reason Sam Burns, now he's won 5 tournaments or 6 tournaments on the PGA Tour. He's won the World Match Play, beat Scheffler. He's played Ryder Cup, President's Cup, but he's never won outside of the South and the Southeast. He's won he won the Valspar twice, the Match Play, the Sanderson Farms. Has he won something else?
He was overrated.
Colonial. He won at Colonial as well. So they're all the same. He's winning
overrated
the same
on a
thing.
non-regional level.
Yeah. And you take him out of that, and he's been pretty naff in his team appearances. His game has not really travelled. I know he played well at Riviera once and at Torrey Pines once, and I'm sure there are other instances. But I feel he's very dependent, and also he just is really good at putting. He's not. He can't. His irons aren't good enough to be called world class. So I'm going to go Sam Burns. But again, I think we both regret the path we've taken here.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a fascinating tournament. I think Scheffler is the big question mark here. Not question mark, but obviously he's won it the last 2 years. It's interesting to note that this is the first year in the last 3 that he hasn't won up until this point. So obviously he's had his injury. He started later this year because he was coming back from injury. But that's the big question mark really over Scheffler, and he's the man to beat. Still remains the man to beat. But it's easier to oppose him than it has been the last 2 years, I would suggest.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. One interesting thing, though, when I looked at the first show of betting, is that last week he opened 7-2 with one firm and 3-1 generally, and Rory McIlroy opened 9-1. And Scheffler beat McIlroy last week, and Scheffler has gone to 9-2. You might even get 5-1, and McIlroy's still 9-1.
Yeah,
I thought that was a bit odd.
Yeah.
Slightly odd. It almost feels like after Rory won again recently, because he went off 14-1 at Pebble Beach, and we all missed that opportunity. I think after Rory has won again, it's almost like someone's placed a ceiling on his price again. And I think there's probably a ceiling on Scheffler's at the moment, like 5 or 6 to 1 for the Masters. I don't think you can get much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But they've just eased him towards that ceiling, whereas they haven't Rory. It just struck me as interesting. I think there's almost a perception that Scheffler didn't play great last week and Rory played quite well, but actually Scheffler hit it really well. Rory hit it rubbish. So of the two, I'd actually be with Scheffler this week, but I won't be with either.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch. It should be a great tournament, and hopefully it'll dry out rapido, because it'd be nice for a little bit of firmness. Right, let's move on to highest bidder, Ben. Now, we've actually had a few submissions for this, so I'm going to give you've got a choice of, let's see how many we've got. I think we've got maybe just 3. So there's 4. So A, B, C, or D?
We'll go for C.
Okay.
And why are you looking for it? I've forgotten we put this on YouTube, so when I muted my mic and coughed furiously, that will still be on video, won't it? Never mind.
Right, here we go.
We're running out of time, so what's the category?
Name the 14 players to have had a hole-in-one on the 17th. Okay.
Okay. I really don't know many, if any.
I think I'm relatively confident I can do this.
I've got 3. I'm going 3. Sorry, Sam.
Okay.
I've broken all 6. Are you mad?
I'm holding up 6. Because a lot of them have been quite recent, Ben.
Be honest. Did you spend last night watching highlights of Players' Championships?
I did not. I actually looked through the leaderboards this morning, so I thought, something leaderboard-esque might come up. But I haven't looked through aces, but I remember them quite vividly from the last couple of years, because there's been a lot of recent ones. Right, here goes.
Now, before you do it,
yes,
I'll be very quick here. You know, at the end of Gladiators, when one person has won Gladiators, and the other person has had 2 goes at the Travelator and they've not made it up, and the other person, the winner of Gladiators, comes to the bottom of the Travelator and roars them on and cheers enthusiastically, and they get up the Travelator. That's what I feel here. I want you to nail this 6.
You want me to?
I just want you to get the 6. I'm on your side, even though I've got 3 names written down right here. Go for it.
Right, Ryan Fox.
Don't know. Yeah, okay, next.
Okay. Shane Lowry, because you've infamously has got some of the most iconic ones. And then there was Aaron Rai.
Correct, I got that.
Alex Smylie.
I got that as well.
The same year as, and then Hayden Buckley. I think all 3 of those were the same year or within the last 2 years.
You've named 5 already.
Yeah, I know, and this is where I struggle. You see, I thought you were going to go higher, so I thought, I better push it to 6.
Hayden Buckley is correct. I think I've got one, and if you need it, you can just have it. I'm just Googling it.
I mean, this one, I know that this isn't one that Fred Couples infamously made a sort of hole-in-one essentially on his second ball, but I know that won't really count, will it? No, the other one. See, I may struggle here. Just give me 2 minutes. Not 2 minutes. 1 minute.
I'm Googling. Now remember, this was your rule at a low ebb. You get a mulligan. So I
get a mulligan, yeah. I could just have a random stab.
You, really, is it?
I don't know if that's going to massively help, but
you've got all the recent ones. Yeah, you have.
I've got a good recent memory.
Did you say Couples, by the way? Because it is listed on the bunkered list of players who've had a hole-in-one.
Well, if you'll give me that, Ben. I mean, ultimately, I need the points. So.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Yeah.
Yes.
So, do you want? I'll quickly read out the others for those listening. So, I'm going to give you clues really quickly. Right. Democrat from the northwest wears a tie.
Oh, Ryan Moore.
Yeah. Won Live Hong Kong last week.
Sergio Garcia.
Sung Jae-im's caddy.
Will Wilcox.
The coolest man in golf smokes cigars.
Rocco Mediate?
No, it's from Spain.
Oh, sorry, Miguel Angel Jimenez.
Very good. Awful commentator, American. They thought they invented the pod system in Ryder Cups.
Oh, Hal Sutton.
No, did he invent the pod system? Sorry,
Paul Azinger. Paul Azinger, yeah, sorry, yeah.
And the others, Brad Fable, Brian Clark, and Joey Sindelar. I'm not going to waste our precious minute remaining to think of clues for those players that I've basically never heard of. Obviously, I've heard of Joey Sindelar.
I will have to look up whether Couples got a separate hole-in-one on another occasion, but either way, I'm delighted to get my first 5 points.
Thrilled for you. I had Aaron Rai, Alex Smylie, and I'd written down Sam Ryder, but apparently Sam Ryder made like a 10. on the 17th. That's the obviously
one better than my friend Ben Anna, who I think made 11 3 or 4 years ago. So.
He's shot like 80 and 83 at Sawgrass, because I was sort of looking. He's 125 to 1 this week, but he's shot 80 and 83 recently. So yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway,
yeah. Well, we're running rapidly out of time, but thank you very much for joining us for our player special. We'll be back with a more normal episode next week, previewing the DP World Tour event. Enjoy the players this week.